Hey y'all, I'm back with another Legacy video, and today I'm going to be recapping a trophy with AlurenTell. Now, this was actually my final trophy that I got on my trophy leader run from the previous season, so this is still in the Fantasticar meta. This is still pre-Hobbit. I actually have not yet played in the Hobbit meta. I haven't tried Bilbo, I haven't played against it, so I am eager to get into that soon. But to be honest, man, I played a lot of Magic recently, and it's nice to at least take a few days now that the season is over to chill out for a bit before I start hitting the ground with a new Legacy meta. This list is the same list you've seen in the last couple videos. There is one Disruptor Flute and 2 defense grids in the sideboard instead of 3 defense grids. 2 Veil Summer main deck, 2 basic islands, there is a Prismatic Vista, 2 copies of Omniscience, and then pretty much a whole bunch of 4-ofs from there. I do like the 3 Fairy Macabres in the sideboard. I might go down to 2 if I was playing actual paper Magic, and maybe get another Consign, maybe the 4th Veil of Summer. However, online, I think this has been a really nicely tuned deck. And this trophy that I'm about to show you was the final trophy of a 3-league run where I won every match. So 3 straight trophies, 15-match win streak, and I'm actually still on that streak because I haven't played since then. And I actually, immediately after this trophy, the next Magic that I played was I went to my LGS and 3-0'd there as well. So if you count those, I'm on an 18-match win streak with this list. Feels really good. I certainly think there's even room for improvement. And if you play AlurenTell and if you have anything that's been a really good tech for you or different configuration for you, feel free to comment that, because I think this deck is really strong, and because it can win so many games with free wins, it does give me doubt that the list is totally perfect. I think there's still room for improvement for sure, though I quite like where it is right now. Without further ado, let's get into the matches. So I start on the draw, and this hand is okay. The mana is acceptable. The combo pieces are there, but not the ones that really fit together. It does mean there's a lot of good top decks. I think this could be a keep, but I would not begrudge anybody for mulling. It's certainly very likely going to be quite slow. Let's see what I did. So I did keep this hand. You know, you get to Surveil with Flooded Strand. If you top deck Show and Tell, Acererak, a Cantrip, a Force of Will, almost any cantrip or any top deck that's not a land improves this hand mightily. My opponent has Polluted Delta and goes Basic Island and Ponder. And without shuffling, they pass. I draw Brainstorm, so that's perfect. It becomes a question then how to play this. I could just play out the Basic Island. I could still potentially see myself wanting to Surveil, and then I still have a fetch land to pair with the Brainstorm. I could also start with Prismatic Vista and then plan to fetch this at a later time with more information. So I start with the Flooded Strand, and it makes sense because this is a perfect opportunity on curve to Surveil. And my opponent fetching the Basic Island makes me think I'm unlikely to see a Wasteland, at least soon, but we'll see. So they go land, go. I crack this fetch land, and my opponent cracks their fetch land, Basic Swamp, and casts Bowmasters. So that was a bit of a punish for cracking this fetch land, and seeing my opponent holding up Bowmasters, I perhaps should have been more concerned about that. You could argue this was a mistake. However, I actually don't mind brainstorming into a Bowmaster with this deck, because you can often win on the same turn or the next turn if the Brainstorm delivers. So I get my Hedge Maze. I see another Hedge Maze, not really what I'm looking for. I really just have to find Show and Tell or Azorius. So on my turn, I draw another land. So I don't think you should Brainstorm yet. I do think you have to hold the Brainstorm as long as possible to quote unquote play around the Bowmaster. My opponent ponders, shuffles, plays Volcanic Island, so it's looking like Grixis. I get hit for 2 and pass. Okay, Lotus Petal, not great. So I play out the basic island and continue to pass. My opponent plays a mountain, attacks for 2, hits me for 2, so still no Kaito, and passes. I draw another land, so it's starting to look kind of rough, but just keep playing my lands and passing. My opponent has another land, so now they can Force of Will, hard cast. Hits me for 2, Thought Seizes me, takes the Aluren, which makes sense. Fetches, Snapcaster Mage. So I'm going to get double Thought Seized here. Thought Seizes me. Takes the Brainstorm, which I actually think was a really heads-up play from my opponent. They might just think, oh, there's a Bowmaster in play. He's not going to cast the Brainstorm. Or it's going to be really bad if he casts Brainstorm. But actually, you can see my hand's pretty bad, and I really need to keep digging. And so that was my best card in hand right now, I think, for sure, even with the Bowmaster in play. So I do draw Ponder, and that was a very lucky draw. So I cast it. Multiple Brainstorms and a Lotus Petal. I mean, I could draw a Brainstorm, fetch away the other things, and then Brainstorm. I think that's fine, but it looks like I actually drew the Petal. And I actually like this decision because you can maybe see where this is headed. It's just going to hardcast Atraxa. And you can always do that. You don't have to find the other card to pair with it. So this is pretty much the game, but you know, things are getting kind of dire. I'm on a 2-turn clock. And Atraxa resolves. So my opponent probably has something like Lightning Bolt in hand, maybe Kolagon's Command, but no Force of Will or no Force Blue. It would stink if Snapcaster was their blue card, but I still think my opponent played their last turn great. All right, so the Atraxa trigger reveals some good stuff here. Looks like I'll probably take a Veil of Summer, the Show and Tell, Aluren. I don't know, maybe Show and Tell, Brainstorm, Aluren. It's a little dicey. Atraxa's pretty good, but there's no clear route to victory if that gets foiled in some way. And my opponent did have the Shoulder's Edict, so I do lose the Atraxa. I get hit down to 5 and Ponder. So if they didn't Force Will last time, I think it's pretty likely I can Show and Tell and land the Omniscient. And then I have these cantrips to hopefully get the job done. I can also play the Aluren for free off of Omniscience, so that if I Brainstorm into Azorius, I can win with the Bowmaster pings still on the stack. And that all starts with actually just casting the Ponder. I think I agree with that in case I get like Veil of Summer, in case I find the Azorius, and those were really nice cards there. So I am going to have to hope Show and Tell resolves, or just cast the Aluren. But I think at this point I need to be all in. I can't die to a removal spell. So Show and Tell. My opponent has the Force, so I'm dead. So it's possible that they held the Force and they said they have Edict in hand, so that answers Atraxa. And then if they have me dead, they don't have to worry too hard about what comes next. Maybe here it was actually correct to Brainstorm in response because I could get a Veil of Summer. If I found Force of Will, I would die to the Bowmaster pings, but if I found Veil specifically, it would stop all of that. So maybe if that was the third card down after the 2 known cards, I might have still been able to win this game. So actually, I probably should have cast this before scooping. For game 2, here's the sideboard plan. It's a pretty typical fair blue sideboard plan. So the lotus petals come out, the carpets come in. I took out 1 Force of Will and 2 Omniscience. The defense grids came in and 1 Hydroblast came in. I figure they probably have Pyroblast, maybe something like Kolaghan's Command that's pretty high value. I figured a 1 of would be better than having 4 Force of Wills. All right, this hand is really good. Obviously, the mana stinks, but my opponent is pretty unlikely to be a Wasteland deck. So I should be able to go Misty, crack it for a Trop, Ponder, and if Ponder finds me more lands, then we're all systems go here. So there's the Trop, cast Ponder, Ponder sees 1 land, so probably draw the land, Brainstorm then left on top, and redundant Aluren on bottom, likely to be fetched away, but not necessarily. My opponent gets an Underground Sea and casts Ponder. So in this situation, there's 2 things to consider. I'm drawing this Brainstorm, and with the Brainstorm, I can either guarantee the fetch land and the shuffle effect by casting it this turn. It also plays around Orcish Bowmasters. Or I can just slam Defense Grid, which I always like doing early on in these games. And then I'll clear the top of my library, and Brainstorm is more likely to see something like another land. So I crack the fetch, basic island, go for Defense Grid. There's nothing in my hand I'm eager to shuffle away, and as long as Brainstorm finds the land and I can cast Stock Up, then it's all good. And Defense Grid sticks, so you know when Defense Grid sticks versus the blue deck, you are in good shape. My opponent Brainstorms on their turn, has the fetch land, passes the turn. I draw Carpet of Flowers, which is not exquisite this turn, but it does mean that next turn I can stock up for sure. So I actually do start with the Brainstorm, and Brainstorm sees Ancient Tomb, so that means I can actually stock up now. I can go Carpet, go to second main, make blue, play Ancient Tomb, cast stock up. Probably just put back the 2 cantrips and probably end up redrawing at least one of them. There's the Carpet. There's the Tomb. You could maybe argue putting back the Carpet with the Brainstorm since my mana is pretty set up. But I don't have the second green, and I don't have like a show and tell for the Aluren. So I like playing it safe with the mana. So here's the stock up. Stock up sees some okay cards. I was hoping for Acerak, but I can take maybe the Atraxa and the Ponder. I could also go Atraxa and second Carpet, because the second Carpet would then give me my white and my green, or sorry, my white and my black, and leave me just 1 mana short of hard casting Atraxa. And that is the line that I went for. My opponent fetches, plays Orcish Bowmasters. That's totally fine. On my turn, I draw another Atraxa, not great. So here, I start by stocking up. Stock up sees the Acerak, and I can actually win next turn or cast the Atraxa next turn. So I'm pretty rolled up versus a Thoughtseize. I would want to take 1 land if I was going to be able to hard cast Atraxa. So I take the Acerak and the City of Traders. Then play the city, and second main. Oh yeah, this is just game because I found the city. So add green, cast Aluren. My opponent can't cast anything through my defense grid, and I win the game. Game 3, same sideboard, no changes. There's not too many matches where I change the sideboard with this deck play draw. Maybe if you really feel compelled to have Veil of Summer in versus a non-blue deck like you know, Cradle Control that only has a few Thought Seizes, then I could see on the play having them in, and on the draw reducing or cutting all copies. Let's talk about the current game. This has a really high potential. Show and Tell can put in either Aluren or Atraxa. If I have to force a will something, I can still Show and Tell and force pitch Atraxa and still win. So if the mana comes together, it's real nice. And my opponent has Badlands and passes, so I dodge the Thoughtseize, and I get the third land. So this looks like a good window to Misty and Surveil, and I pass. Okay, my opponent has another land, fetch land, but passes. I also pass, so I did not Surveil there, and I guess that makes sense because pending what I draw this turn, I'm going to have another opportunity to Surveil, so the longer you wait, the better information you have. If I top decked a Brainstorm, I'd have to be brave and cast it into Orcish Bowmasters, but I wouldn't have the fetch land anymore, so I do like preserving that. Having drawn another Atraxa, that's not great, but now I don't have to agonize over which card to pitch to the Force of Will. My opponent has a Surveil on end step, discards a Price of Progress. Good to know. I don't think that's a great card for them in this matchup, but you know, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. My opponent has Lorien revealed that they Island Cycle, plays Underground Sea, casts Flow State, and that Flow State will get them 2 cards. So that's fine. 7 cards in hand, but they're going to need double force to prevent Atraxa from entering. Or Acerat. Another land could be good, actually, because if Show and Tell doesn't resolve, then Aluren is the clear follow-up, so I probably should keep that. And I did. So now, Show and Tell. Oh, Show and Tell just resolves. So, interesting decision of what to put in here. Well, I could put in Aluren and just go for broke and try to win now. If my opponent doesn't have a land to put in, then they're probably dead. However, I can do this next turn with this land, so it's probably much safer to just go for Atraxa. And that is what I did, and they did put in the land. They don't have Revolt, so they couldn't necessarily push, but I'm still happy with the line that I took. Now here they do Pyroblast, and it's an interesting decision about whether to force here or not. Honestly, I don't think it's worth it necessarily, but there is a high chance if I don't Force of Will this that I'll go to cleanup. I also know for sure that my opponent doesn't have Force of Will because I'm sure they would have forced, so it's unlikely that I will need to force back against my opponent. But I did let that go. I do think it's probably worth it to hang on to this just in case the trigger is a bit of a dud. It's never the worst punishment to go to cleanup. Wow, nice cards here. So I can get the Carpet, a Brainstorm, a Defense Grid, a Show and Tell. I mean, it's the choices are very slim here. There's pretty much redundant copies of everything. So the only decision is which land to pick, and I guess I picked the island there. And probably I'm going to discard a land and the Brainstorm, and maybe both lands and the Brainstorm. Yep. So all action in the hand here. My opponent Thought Seizes me, and they get the Show and Tell. Then they play Tamiyo, flip the Tamiyo. So now because the Tamiyo has flipped, you pretty much have to go for it now. So then the question is how to make that happen. I have the Force of Will. I have to resolve Carpet to have enough mana, so that's the obvious start. But rather than playing Defense Grid and letting my opponent discard Acerat and then leave me kind of with nothing as this Tamiyo is then ticking up to the ultimate, it's just time to jam. Show me that you can beat Force of Will. to back up my combo. And part of being a good combo gamer is you have to realize when your window is at its strongest. And here, I definitely have the strongest window that I'm going to get. I cast Alluren, and my opponent doesn't even make me play through. They know what I have in hand. They scoop it up right now. GG's. Match number 2, I win the die roll, and I get this solid hand. Lands and spells. My opponent moles to 6, and then they're good. So Prismatic Vista, you want to lead on the Vista because Misty has so many more things that it can get. And if you want a basic island, might as well crack the Vista. Wow, perfect cards. So turn 3 combo looks like it's all systems go. Probably just draw the Trop and hide the other 2 cards from discard. And yes, I like Azorius on very bottom because that if I did end up like losing the Brainstorm to a discard spell or something, the Azorius is more important than the Show and Tell with Alluren in hand. Here my opponent has Sphere of Resistance, which basically ruins my plan, but I do have my one of Boseiju in hand, so it's really not too bad. Here, I just play the Trop and pass. I'm going to preserve this fetch land. And I definitely want to wait as long as I can. Here, I do Boseiju. And the only thing that's worrisome here is they get this Savannah, which is untapped, which means if they have their own swords or Boseiju, they can stop my combo, but I'm for sure going to make you show me that. And I'm going to go for it. If it doesn't work out, I can still rebuild with the stock up. So I get Alluren, my opponent puts in Thespian Stage, and pass. And then here they copy the Urza Saga, so I decide now is a good time to go. Maybe I should have just held off and waited until my opponent tapped out. Because here my opponent actually did have the Boseiju, unfortunately, so I can get a Hedge Maze. Hedge Maze sees Atraxa, it's not really what I'm looking for. And I get to scry another land, not what I'm looking for, and I pass. My opponent gets to tick up the sagas, and they just pass. Okay, so here, interesting decision of how to sequence. I think you probably want to start with either Brainstorm or Ponder. Brainstorm has the most upside. If you are interested in trying to win the game now, it's got to be with Brainstorm because you need multiple cards. Ponder could be shuffled right away, but stock up would also be acceptable, but you certainly won't be able to win this turn. I did decide to start with the Brainstorm. And whoa, look at that. I was absolutely rewarded for that decision because now I actually can win. I found the Alluren and I found the land. And it was even an Ancient Tomb, so I could ponder and shuffle the cards as well if I'm interested in that. Try to find Force of Will. Let's see how I played it out. I actually put the ponder back. That makes sense because I don't really need it. It's kind of a YOLO attempt to find Force of Will. And I can keep a stock up in hand this way. So my opponent makes a construct. This time I pass because if my opponent does have Boseiju again or swords, I don't want them to have access to that in multiple instances over the turn cycle. Here, as they are resolving chapter 3 or they have it on the stack, I try to combo again. And this time I win. And the reason to do that now is my opponent very well could have Haywire Might. And my opponent is certainly ahead. So I'm the one who's going to have to force the issue and combo. The only thing I could do if they got Haywire Might is I could just hold off. They can't activate it. It pseudo Rishadan ports their own green source forever. And then maybe stock up and other cantrips could find another Azorius or another Alluren. On the draw for game 2, I see a turn 2 Atraxa. And I like that versus a deck that doesn't play Force of Will, for sure. My opponent goes Urza's Saga and passes. Well, they play Skateboard in their second main. Tap their own Skateboard down and pass. I draw another land, not fantastic, but it's fine. Here, my opponent has another Saga and Damping Sphere, which is kind of awkward with these Ancient Tombs, which now only will tap for 1. It also shuts off Aluren. Damping Sphere pretty good against AlurenTell, I will say. So I draw Brainstorm, that's nice. I go Basic Island, Brainstorm, probably just get rid of the low value Ancient Tombs. I could probably also get rid of the Aluren with the Damping Sphere in play. Maybe put back 1 Tomb, 1 Aluren. That's what I did. Play the Strand and pass, holding up Consign to Memory. Another question is, which one of these would you consign? I honestly don't remember what I did, but I feel like what I did ended up being wrong. So I did let them get Chapter 2, but Chapter 3, I fetch and consign. And that does prevent them from getting like a expedition map, which might help them to combo. Here, they, after getting exploration, just made that construct, and then they pass. So now, pretty much just want to jam Atraxa. So show and tell, put in Atraxa. My opponent puts in Caracas, which is really rough because this is a bit of a soft lock here between Damping Sphere and Caracas. I'm not going to be able to win with Aluren, and I'm not going to be able to win in combat. So it's pretty rough. I would need to draw Boseiju. And my trigger here finds nothing great. More opportunities to dig. So stock up, force a negation probably. Aluren, Atraxa, and Misty. But I actually took the city. Was probably not thinking about the Damping Sphere at that time. And the Atraxa gets sent back, so I discard an Atraxa, the city, and the tomb. Now my opponent has Expedition Map off Chapter 3. They make a really big construct, attack me for 6. I get to stock up. Stock up sees not good cards. I can get a land and any other random card pretty much. Consign probably, or Brainstorm, because I still have to dig. I just went ahead and took the Acerak, which actually I guess makes sense because I'm not going to win the game unless I remove this, but I should be able to win the game if I am so lucky. My opponent cracks the map, gets Ghost Quarters. That's going to be really brutal. I already have all my basics out. And I discard the Lotus Petal. And here they start Ghost Quartering me, so pretty dead here. Another Sphere. I force a negation that. Here I cast Ponder, see a bunch of lands, so shuffle. And here I can see that I'm dead because I can't win next turn. And I could even just be dead to attacks. I can't fetch, I can't tap the tomb. So on to game 3. I may have neglected to show you my sideboard for game 2. So here it is. Omnisciences are out. Veil of Summers are out. And you bring in Force of Negation and 2 Consigns. And the Disruptor Flute is actually pretty nice here. And I see a nice, well-rounded hand. Probably want to start by holding up Consign to Memory. And I probably want to save this Misty. So as awkward as it is versus the Wasteland deck, I'm probably going to start with Tropical Island. And pass. My opponent starts with Horizon Canopy, Exploration, and Dark Depths. Okay, I see. Another cantrip off the top. Cast Brainstorm. Here I see, sadly, no more lands, but I do see Force of Will, which will be nice. I see a couple stock ups. I probably can put back 1 stock up and 1 other card and maybe bin 1 stock up with the Hedge Maze, which would tap me off of Consign to Memory. But I think that's just the way to go. I do have the Force of Will after all. So I put back the Ponder and the stock up, and I just keep the Ponder on top. I mean, makes sense. They're all good cards. My opponent has Wasteland, and here they go Sphere of Resistance rather than Wastelanding me, and I think they'll be punished for that for sure. So here I do probably just have to pitch that Consign to Memory, which I did, and that preserves some action in my hand. So here I fetch Basic Island, cast Stock Up. I see Show and Tell and another land and a Lotus Petal. I probably want to go Lotus Petal Show and Tell, and that way I can't really get wastelanded. Unless they have another wasteland, I can't really get wastelanded off of Show and Tell next turn. But actually I took the Force in the Show and Tell. So I was willing to let my opponent possibly cut me off of the ability to cast that. My opponent has Malevolent Rumble. I don't know if this is a deck that's really supposed to counter Malevolent Rumble. So I did let them have that. Looks like they are going to draw another Sphere. And I think what my opponent should have done is sacrifice this spawn rather than tap the Wasteland down. Because now I can force this, and now my opponent is in trouble. Another Show and Tell is okay. Cast Show and Tell, put in Aluren. My opponent puts in Skateboard. You're going to have to show me your last two cards are Force of Vigor and a green card. I'm not going to let you untap into both Seiju and hardcast Force of Vigor. So here we go. And my opponent doesn't have anything. I win. GG's. Match 3 on the draw. This hand is fine. My opponent reveals Kahira, so they could be some sort of elemental deck. I mean, any one of those creature types you see there, they could be. I think there's also a control list that I've seen that has like basically no creatures, and then Kahira is something that you can get in hand later on in the game. My hand's totally fine. My opponent goes Misty and pass. I draw another Stock Up, so I go Flood Strand. Go ahead and just play the Lotus Petal out and pass. I thought there was some chance my opponent could have Thalia. My opponent goes Prismatic Vista and passes. I don't fetch. Instead, I play Misty, pass for one more turn rather than cracking the Petal to stock up. And my opponent has an end step Brainstorm. Sure. Then they pass and redraw one of the cards from the Brainstorm. Then fetch and counterbalance. Yikes. Well, my hand is pretty good against counterbalance right now. There's no one drops. I don't think I can afford to force a will this, but let's see if I did. I might have tried. It's pretty annoying playing against counterbalance, but no, I let him have it. So now I think it's worth it to double Surveil. So crack one, get a Hedge Maze, and I got the Prismatic Vista on top, so I'll leave this uncracked and draw that. I was definitely looking for another land so I can preserve Lotus Petal. And here, it might even make sense to just jam Aluren, but I did choose to lead on Stock Up. And counterbalance trigger flips Jace the Mind Sculptor. Wow, good thing I didn't Aluren. And Stock Up will resolve. So I don't need another Aluren. I really don't need another land. I could go Veil plus Show and Tell, or rather Veil plus City. The Veil is awkward though, because you have to Veil before the counterbalance trigger if you don't want to get your thing countered by counterbalance. Probably just give up on the Veil versus the deck designed to probably counter one drops. And just go Show and Tell Atraxa and have that other route to victory. But I went City plus Show and Tell. I guess that makes sense too, because now I can go Show and Tell. If that gets countered, then the next turn Aluren, and then the next turn Aluren, and I don't have to worry about drawing any more lands. My opponent draws the Jace, passes. I draw another Force of Will. So now I think it's time to jam the first Aluren. See if they have a Brainstorm to put Jace on top. Looks like they don't. And back to basics coming soon. Good to know about for future games. My opponent casts Force of Negation, so I'm going to go for broke here. Force of Will, pitch Show and Tell. Hopefully they don't have a force on top. Counterbalance reveals Prismatic Vista. That's good because that's also not 3 mana spell for Azorius. So they force again. I force again. Alluren resolves. Azorius and GG. Sideboarding. Very similar to the Grixis deck. Omniscience is out. Lotus Petals out. Defense Grid's in. The other copy of Veil in. And the 3 Carpet of Flowers. I don't know if I said I brought in Veil versus Grixis Control, but yeah, you definitely want to bring that in versus the Thoughtseize deck and the Force of Will deck. Wow, this is the God hand versus blue. I mean, yes, I would love to have like Show and Tell Atraxa or something, but the Carpet plus Veil plus Defense Grid is nasty, and then I can just stock up to my heart's content. Yes, please. I will say against Counterbalance, Defense Grid is not the best because they don't have to cast a spell potentially to counter spells. All right, there's Atraxa. So I just play the land and pass. No need to necessarily jam the Carpet. I can just Surveil if I'm interested in that. That does play into back to basics, but no need to rush this. I don't have anything to do with the mana anyway. My opponent has Ponder. No shuffle. Plays a fetch. Passes the turn. And I do not Surveil. I draw Brainstorm. That's nice. I could just possibly Brainstorm this turn. I could just jam one of these nice anti-blue cards, but this one I hadn't brainstormed. And there's Azorius. I can live with one of those. Maybe put back the Ponder. Maybe put back the Atraxa. Probably put back the Ponder. I put back one stock up. Actually, I think I like that. I can always redraw it, but no guarantee the mana situation will permit for stock up. Brainstorm on end step for my opponent. Could mean a counterbalance or back to basics is coming down. Instead, they just ponder again after fetching, they shuffle and pass. So I actually redraw the stock up. I think that's totally fine. You're not required to shuffle away any cards with Brainstorm if you like the cards. So here, I probably want to fetch basic forest, cast Ponder, see if Ponder can find another green source, and then attempt to cast Carpet of Flowers backed by Veil of Summer. So here's Ponder. No luck with that, but these are pretty solid cards. I don't know. I kind of want the land. Let's see, did I have the discipline to shuffle these nice cards? I don't even know if that's necessarily correct. But looks like I did shuffle and rewarded because I got the green source. So play the Flooded Strand, cast Carpet. Carpet just resolves, so now actually I get to jam Defense Grid. So I cast that, and that also resolves. Now my opponent does have 3 mana, but that means that Veil of Summer is going to be a pretty hard lock against my opponent's counter magic. Because each counterspell costs 3. So you force a will me on Veil, you can't force back. My opponent has another Brainstorm. They Prismatic Ending. The Defense Grid. I have to say, I'm a little shocked that this is in my opponent's deck. Maybe it really does feel that important, and maybe my opponent was aware that I might be sideboarding into these cards. I don't know. I think it's pretty bold to play Prismatic Ending post-board versus AlurenTell, but they had it, so kudos to them. And then Portent, target themselves. My goodness. And no shuffle. They draw for Portent. I get my other islands. So that means I can definitely Surveil here. And this Carpet is still just going to go pretty nuts. Cast stock up. Another carpet and an Aluren means I now have Hardcast Atraxa and Aluren Acerak and another stock up. It's looking pretty good. But here I can, yeah, just cast this carpet and try to win right now. So green, and notice I'm leaving one green in the pool. That means I don't have to crack this fetch. So a little bit of value like that could be the difference in winning or losing a game. So I used the carpet for 3 green, tapped the islands for 2 blue, but saved one of the green. So careful when you're using Carpet of Flowers that you really think about how you want to spend that mana. Sure enough, my opponent has Force of Will. Veil of Summer resolved, so that should be the game. Cast Acerak, my opponent scoops. GG's. Match 4, I'm on the play. And this hand looks great. Just want to find a Show and Tell or an Acerak, so lots of things I can find with these cantrips. And so I start with Basic Island, cast Ponder. There's Acerak, and other nice cards as well. I will need another land. So I draw the Brainstorm, then hide the stock up. Next, an Acerak on bottom. My opponent goes Tundra, and punished for playing the Petal out. Prismatic Ending on the Petal. Yeah, that's fine. You can always sacrifice the Petal in response to something like that, but I didn't have any use for it in the graveyard, so. Cast Brainstorm. Brainstorm sees another land. I can probably play this Hedge Maze and bin the redundant Aluren with my mana situation still in flux. So that is what I do, and I pass. My opponent has Prismatic Vista and another Counterbalance deck. You don't say. All right. So I redraw that Acerak, and so definitely because of the Counterbalance, I want to go stock up here. It's just so likely Brainstorm gets countered. So here's stock up. My opponent has Prismatic Ending on top, which would have countered Brainstorm because X would be 0. So stock up resolves, thankfully. And so I can get probably this Ancient Tomb and the other Aluren, give me multiple chances to go for it. Awesome. My opponent ponders, no shuffle, plays a land. So I can assume there's probably another 1-drop on top of their deck if they kept and were using their Counterbalance in their ponder resolution. So let's see if it's a 4-drop on top. Probably not. And amazingly, my opponent just scoops it up right here. And I'm not going to show the sideboarding for this. It's going to be the same as the previous because my opponent actually, they didn't concede the match here, but they never came back. And then they timed out due to idleness. I just kind of assumed maybe they were like double queued. I don't know. Maybe they're like 0-2 in a league and this was just the last straw, but they just never came back. So you got to take the easy wins when you can get them. And now I get a trophy match. All right, on the play. This hand is fine. I've played my opponent many times, and sometimes he's on Painter. This would be fine against Painter. Sometimes Initiative, which is interesting. You know, a matchup like that could end very poorly if it's like an early Archon of Emeria, Magus of the Moon, something like that, but you just can't put this hand back. Okay, Island, Lotus Petal, in case they do have any sort of taxing effect, and then pass. My opponent goes City of Traders, Lotus Petal, Trinisphere. Brutal. That completely ruins my plan. So I'm definitely going to Brainstorm in response. And Brainstorm sees Force Blue and the other green source. Wow. So I can just put back this Veil of Summer that I'm almost certainly not going to need. And then like Azorius or any card other than Force of Will Ponder is fine. And counter Trinisphere. So I redraw that city, I play Misty, and pass. My opponent loses their city, plays Cavernous Souls, names Human. I'm very happy to see then exiling Simian Spirit Guide because it's something like Anointed Peacekeeper that I wouldn't want to see, but an initiative creature, that's totally fine. Can't really use value off the initiative if you lose the game on the spot the next turn. I just have to hope that there's not like Archon of Emeria or something like that. So actually, getting the second Azorius does feel very important to play around something like that. So here's Aluren, here's Azorius, and one was enough. GG's. So against an initiative deck, honestly, this is the matchup that most makes me wish I had removal in the 75, but I just really don't think this deck wants much in the way of removal. It really would be a meta call, but there's not great removal that you have access to anyway. Stock ups, 2 stock ups leave and 1 island, and I brought in the consigns and the Force of Negation. Just have to stop some sort of big tax spell or chalice potentially. Stock up is a little slow and doesn't feel great when your opponent has the initiative rolling. So that's the plan. Let's see if I can get there. I see a hand that's quite nice. Really, you just want to be able to stop what your opponent's doing early in the game. My opponent mulls to 6, mulls to 5. And good on 5. My opponent goes Plateau, Lotus Petal, Trinisphere. Well, that is good, but I do have the Force. So the question is which Force to use, which card to pitch. The most upside is just going Force of Negation, pitch Force of Will, and just saying you only have 1 mana and 1 card left in hand. Like, show me that you can do something I have to counter after this. While I sculpt and find what I need to win. You could also go Force Pitch Brainstorm and just trust in the Surveil and draw steps to find you stuff. Could also go Force Pitch Show and Tell and brainstorm hopefully into Azorius and lands. Let's see what I did. I did pitch the Show and Tell. So that was probably one of the safer routes to take. That might have been the most safe route. So here I get to just play the Hedge Maze. I see another land, which is something I am definitely in the market for. So I pass. My opponent just has to pass after burning those Lotus Petals. And I get an island. So here I play Prismatic Vista and pass. It is, I think, good to hold this Brainstorm at least one more turn, if possible, especially since it is currently my blue card. So on my turn, I draw another land. So I play the land and pass. And because it was Misty, you can get Hedge Maze, so that's another opportunity to dig before committing to the Brainstorm. My opponent has Ancient Tomb, so the mana is there, and a Trinisphere. So here, I think the best course of action is to start with a Surveil, see what you see. Let's see if I did that. I did do that. And a Hydroblast. Now, I'm really thankful to see this Hydroblast, because even though that doesn't counter Trinisphere, it means I can leave this on top, Brainstorm, guarantee a blue card, and fix my hand. So here's Brainstorm, and oh boy, there we go. So I can put back an Aluren and one of the blue cards, probably put back the Brainstorm. And then I could redraw the Brainstorm, but it looks like I put it 2 down and then just shuffle. I think that's also fine. I mean, I think it has to be like a 99% chance of winning at this point versus my opponent's strategy. So there's Aluren, there's Azorius, and I get there for another trophy. So this was a bit of a non-game to finish it up, But that's kind of honestly how Initiative goes. I feel like they either pummel you or you pummel them pretty commonly, almost no matter what you're playing. Obviously, there are some close matches, but a lot of times it feels kind of one-sided. Looking back at the deck, this list has served me so well. And as we enter a new era post Fantasticar, I do expect that something pretty similar is going to be totally fine. I'm curious to see what the immediate future holds for Legacy, but if you're interested in playing AlurenTell, I would recommend starting with this exact 75 and tune it to your local meta. Or if you're playing Magic Online, I think you'll find this list pretty nice. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.